7 o'clock, Your Worship.
Good evening, everybody. I'll bring this regular council meeting to order, February the 1st, 2021, and to acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of Stahelis. And the next order of business, please.
Yes, Your Worship. We have number 2, introduction of late items.
Any late items from yes, Councillor Palmer.
I would like to introduce a late item, which would be a motion that I won't read right now, but a motion. I want to introduce a motion simply that the 3 grant applications that we have approved in the last 3 months not to proceed going out to tender without further approval of council. I've got wording set out for that.
Okay, thank you. Any other items? Okay, call the question.
Yes, Your Worship. We have approval of the agenda as amended then, please.
Approval of the agenda is amended, moved by Councillor Palmer, seconded by Councillor Vital. Call the question. All in favour? Everybody in favour? Thank you. And the next order of business, please.
Shoot, I'm sorry, Your Worship. We have the regular council meeting minutes of January 18, 2021 here for adoption.
We have the 18th of January council meetings, moved by Councillor Piper, seconded by Councillor Vidal. Any errors or omissions? Call the question. All in favour? Opposed, anybody? No, thank you. Next order of business, please.
Yes, Your Worship. We have the Committee of the Whole meeting minutes of January 20th, 2020 here for adoption.
And the Committee of the Whole here for adoption, moved by Councillor Vidal, seconded by Councillor Hooper. Any errors or omissions? Call the question. All in favour? Thank you. The next order of business, please.
Yes, Your Worship. We have nothing on business arising from the minutes or consent agenda or delegations or petitions. We'll move on to number 8, correspondence. We have the Lower Mainland Local Government Association resolutions notice request for submissions. Here for receipt, Your Worship.
And we have this for receipt, the Lower Government Association, moved by Councillor Palmer, seconded by Councillor Vidal. Any discussion on this? Call the question. All in favour? Everybody in favour? Thank you. Next order of business, please.
Yes, Your Worship. We have number 9, any business arising from that correspondence?
Any business from council arising from the correspondence? None being, moving on, please.
Thank you. We'll move on to number 10, reports of councillors, committees, Committee of the Whole and commissions.
Councillor Hooper.
Yeah, good evening. On the 22nd and 27th of January, I took part in the video conference and training with the CNIB. On the 19th of January, I took part in a webinar held by the Terramack Institute on food resilience. This was part 2 of 2 for Fraser Health. On the 25th of January, I attended the Committee of the Whole meeting at Memorial Hall. 21st of January, I also attended a video conference with Angelina Robinson on road safety. The main topic was conflict with cyclists and their injuries and the conflicts at road junctions. This was part of Road Safety at Work and Fraser Health. On the 21st again of January, I attended the LGBTQ2 Academy Zoom conference meeting held by Jodie Weck, again part of Fraser Health. 22nd of January, I attended a Zoom meeting with Fraser Health. And on the 28th of January, I attended a Zoom meeting with members of the Foundry and Yake as part of Fraser Health. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Palmer.
Well, related to the three things on my list, actually I attended nothing because the Fraser Valley Regional Library Board was scheduled for the time of our committee of the whole. So I missed it, my first miss on that. But other than that, nothing further to report.
Well, I've got you on there, Councillor. Do you have any comments on the increase and the lack of use of Harrison residents not using the library?
Yeah, the lack of use surprised me a bit because one would think during the pandemic, COVID, the people would be doing more reading. Throughout the valley, use is up somewhat, and which is good. I think obviously the library provides services to, in many respects, the people with the least amount of facilities themselves. They can go to the library and access internet, computers. So the actual setting of the budget this year really was careful was looked at, thinking that at a time when people of lower income were being hit so much by the pandemic, cutting library services seemed a bad idea. So there was a bit of an increase. And of course, the library board, as you can imagine, has a built-in union increase in any event. So the increase there was an increase in the budget. It was mild. But the reduction in Harrison residents really does surprise me. It could well be just that people are just staying closer to home, including making less trips to Agassiz and less trips to accessing the library.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Councillor Piper.
Thank you, Worship. On January 20th, I attended the Committee of the Whole meeting. And on January 27th, I attended the Harrison Tourism Society Board of Directors meeting. That's the end of my report.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Vidal.
Thank you, Your Worship. On January 20th, I also attended the Committee of the Whole meeting. On January 21st, I attended the Agassiz Harrison Healthy Communities meeting. And also on January 21st, I attended executive meeting of the Lower Mainland Local Government Association. And as the correspondence indicated, the conference, which was to be scheduled in Harrison this year, the executive has made a decision to go virtual. The dates will remain the same, and I will certainly keep the rest of council updated as we get some further details. This morning, I attended a virtual forum that was hosted by BC Assessment, and I also attended a town hall meeting called Facing the Future as part of this week's Local Government Leadership Academy Forum. And that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Well, I've got you on, Councillor, as you brought it to my attention earlier this evening. Would you like to announce the Appreciation Day for me?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I want to also make mention that today has been proclaimed Royal Canadian Mounted Police Appreciation Day in BC. This proclamation and date falls on the 100th anniversary of the RCMP. And on behalf of council, I want to extend a sincere thank you to the members and staff of our local detachment for the outstanding work they do for our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. The next order of business, please.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. We'll move on to number 11, Mayor's reports from the Mayor.
Thank you. Just a few little items here. On January the 29th, attended a conference call with our minister, Josie Osborne, and also present was the UBCM president, Brian Frankel, who said a few words prior to the meeting beginning. There was a total of some 39 communities That's one of 5 regions that the minister attends to keep everybody posted and to get their ideas on what they would like to see the government move forward with. I had a couple of points that was brought forward to the minister. One was in relationship to the looking to address how climate change is impacting our community. And one of the problems, as we all know, and we have applied for a grant, is the facing issue that we have with the intense storms, particularly in the winter months, and the problem with the localized flooding on the provincial highways that runs through our community. As you know, we have reached out to MOTI on several occasions, looking to partner with them to help find solutions to these new problems. And we look forward to the government helping us to facilitate partnerships to try and resolve these emerging issues. And the second one was with respect to opportunities. We're getting busier and busier in Harrison with visitors from the lower mainland mostly, and demand for electric vehicle charging station has never been greater. We'd hope that the private sector would serve this market, but realize that the need for rapid charging stations is here now, and that good technology exists to allow for public user-paced systems. Our council wants to promote and support this kind of clean and green transportation in our region. To that end, we hope that the province will consider offering another intake of the Clean BC Communities Fund, hopefully offering 100% funding for this type of infrastructure. And that was the points that I brought up with the minister. Other communities brought up their own points, and it was good that the minister is conducting this meeting following Selena Robinson that was doing this last year, and we really appreciate the work and also the work of her staff in arranging these meetings. On behalf of the regional districts on their quarterly update, just a few little things here. In the electoral areas, C and D, and one other one there, they conducted a OCP with the public, and as things are being done nowadays, that was conducted via Zoom, and the public were all on board with this to conduct it by Zoom and get through the OCP process for 3 of the regions in the electoral areas. BC Hydro, they received a grant, provided funding for the installation of 4 dual head level 2 electric vehicle charging stations at the corporate office. There are now a total of 10 level 2 charging stations available to the public. In the bylaw department, amendment notice of bylaw offence notice enforcement bylaw was adopted by the board in December. The amendment enables tickets to be given for works conducted without first obtaining a development permit. This will provide a new tool for addressing unpermitted works within riparian zones and hazard areas. Animal control in the 4th quarter, the care centre impounded just over 30 dogs per month, down from the 3rd quarter. While there was a reduction in the number of dogs claimed in the 3rd quarter, the 4th quarter saw an increase in pound of, excuse me, almost 90%. A partnership with the radio station 8.95, The Drive introduced a new adoptable dog program to the public twice a month, and several dogs have been adopted. Animal controllers work through applications to provincial court. Well, this is to do with the putting down of dogs. I won't get involved with that. And the food mesh, which I have brought forward to council on several occasions over the past year or so. Food mesh, a regional food recovery network in partnership with the FBRD, delivered its project report for 2019-2020. Over 18-month period, the program diverted 1.8 million kilograms of food, created approximately 1.5 million meals across the Fraser Valley, and prevented 2.1 million kilograms of CO2 from entering the atmosphere. A great program which will continue. And that's just a few brief reports from the regional district. And next order of business, please.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. We'll move on to number 12, reports from staff. The first report is from the Chief Administrative Officer regarding municipal and regional district tax, the MRDT program.
Ms. McDonald?
Yes, Your Worship, thank you. Through you, before we ask that the recommendations in the report be put on the table for consideration, I would like to ask the corporate officer to read out a slight addition to the first part of the recommendation to add some more detail. And this is because we've been in daily contact with the ministry over this particular issue, and they had a suggestion as to how to make this recommendation slightly more specific. If I could pass it over to the corporate officer.
Thank you.
Corporate officer, thank you.
So, Your Worship, the recommendation for the report, the first portion of the recommendation should read as amended, that a letter of support be forwarded to Tourism Harrison to apply as a designated recipient under the Municipal and Regional District Tax Program for the collection of the 3% additional tax on accommodation in the designated accommodation areas of the municipalities of the Village of Harrison Hot Springs and District of Kent and the Fraser Valley Regional District Electoral Area C, as amended, Your Worship.
Thank you. So we have a recommendation. Do we have a move and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Piper, seconded by Councillor Vidal. Discussion. Councillor Hooper, you're upside down. Councillor Hooper, can you hear me?
I can hear you. I'm looking at myself. I'm the right way up.
I know. So am I.
So, yeah, the question I've got is the bylaw for this. We're writing out the bylaw. Does our bylaw cover the District of Kent and the Fraser Valley Regional District?
The CAO has a comment.
Your Worship, through you, no, the bylaw that's currently in effect, which will expire at the end of 2021, is just for the Village of Harrison Hot Springs. The proposed new bylaw that we talked about in a report on January 18th would have been written to include the District of Kent and Electoral Area C of the Fraser Valley Regional District. But the purpose of the report before you tonight is to suggest an alternate method of doing this, which has come to light since we've met with the Tourism Harrison staff recently, since we came to council on the 18th. And that would be to let the bylaw, the current bylaw, expire, to be replaced by a new agreement between Tourism Harrison and the ministry, in which they would be the designated recipient of the funds coming from the Village of Harrison Hot Springs, the District of Kent, and Electoral Area C, if this is approved by those other agencies. We've been in discussion, as I said, with the Minister of Tourism, and they said that this shift to the designated recipient model is one that they strongly support, and it's increasingly replacing the old municipal bylaws that that were originally put in place when this program was first introduced.
Thank you.
One last question. So if the District of Kent and the Fraser Regional District don't take part in this, it's where's the what other additional 3% tax are they going to get from Harrison? Because we don't have any Airbnbs, and as far as I know, everything else pays the tax.
They still get the MRDT, the Tourism Harrison, as it stands now. Forget about, just for the moment, Kent and Area C, that they still receive the MRDT, the 3%.
So this is the 3%
What the administrator is saying, that if we allow our bylaw to run out by the end of 2021, is that correct? That Tourism Harrison would take this on, because now it will save the flow through of all the paperwork and administration going through our office. It'll be dealt directly with Tourism Harrison, which is, it doesn't, we don't lose anything out of it. Actually, we gain, because we'll have less less administration to deal with. Is that correct, Madeline?
Yes, Your Worship, it would just be a more direct, streamlined model. And it may also be more attractive to the other jurisdictions who are currently considering joining in and contributing through taxation in their jurisdiction, where Tourism Harrison is already really working, and that's in the District of Kenton electoral area, C of the Fraser Valley Regional District.
So we'll still receive our RMI funding, councillor.
Right, but there'd be no additional.
No,
like for a
No,
work-
no, we never had any
working village.
additional. It was
Oh.
always the 2% for the village and the 3% which came under the MRDT for tourism, marketing and advertising and everything.
The only concern I've got is that it's all going to be run by Tourism Harrison. We won't get to see their 5-year strategic business plan, will we? Or their evidence of consultation with the
Well,
others.
well, we will do, because we have Councillor Piper, who sits on the Tourism Harrison board, and also that Tourism Harrison every year does do a report to council on how the marketing has progressed over the past year, as they did last year.
Right, so Councillor Piper will supply us with the 5-year strategic plan and the consultation. Evidence.
Councillor Piper will report back from any minutes or any discussion that she thinks relevant to the council when she makes her report.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Vital.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you to staff for the report. I just have a few questions because I'm wanting a little bit of clarification. Am I correct in assuming that currently the village receives the funds from MRDT and that it is then dispersed to Tourism Harrison? So I understand the idea of kind of eliminating that one paper trail and allowing tourism to go directly to be the recipient of the funds as a recipient. But does a village receive any of the MRDT funds for use in tourism related activities that the village itself puts on?
No, it's a CAO.
Yes, Your Worship, through you. Thank you. That's an excellent question. No, we do not retain any of the MRDT funds, and neither are we eligible to spend them on anything other than flowing them through to tourism. This is a tax that's collected by the accommodation providers only, and it's used for marketing purposes, which can include some overhead for Tourism Harrison. So there's that indirect benefit to the village. But only in very exceptional circumstances can any MRDT funds be used for capital projects. It has to be approved by the province and added into the legislation, and it's very rarely done, although it has been done in a couple of communities, but it's only for tourism marketing infrastructure. So it's not similar to the RMI funds that we get, where we are tasked to create events and infrastructure for tourists with those funds. So we don't retain an administration fee, and we don't use any of the funds, and neither are we eligible to do so.
Okay, thank you. So if this resolution does pass, are we then looking at needing to come into an agreement similar to District of Kent or Fraser Valley on a letter of agreement between the village itself and
I don't
tourism?
believe so, but I'll allow the administrator to elaborate on that.
Thank you.
If this motion passes, it will include direction to staff to provide a letter of support, which will be part of the application package that Tourism Harrison will submit to the ministry. But no, we don't enter into any agreement with them other than that, because this is a provincial sales tax. And so the relationship is between the province and the service provider who would be the designated recipient Tourism Harrison under this model.
Okay, thank you. I guess I have a level of concern is I don't want to see the possibility of losing, and not that we did in the past, but some level of oversight on the part in the village in the use of the funds. But I do know that Councillor Piper is our liaison. So my curiosity has been satisfied, and I will vote in support of the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Piper, then Councillor Palmer.
Thank you, Worship. Just a comment. I fully support the recommendation, and I think the conversations from the last two times that this has been on our agenda shows to me even a greater degree of clarity of why Tourism Harrison should be the administrator of the funds. We were basically, if this goes through, we were basically just the pass-through for it. So I guess any confusion that was left with anybody or misunderstanding of what MRDT is or the processes, for me, it just makes it cleaner that it would go back to Tourism Harrison to administer themselves. And I have no worries that Harrison or any of the other areas that may sign on would be not treated as an equal. So I fully support the recommendation. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Palmer.
Thank you. Just a question or two. I think I'm supportive. I just said, to be honest, Tourism Harrison is always in one of those areas I don't always have a really good understanding. My question would be in terms of the existing bylaw, do we have any does the village have oversight or responsibility for oversight of the Tourism Harrison budget?
I'll get clarity from the administrator on that.
Through you, Your Worship, no, they are a standalone third-party agency, and they're responsible for the administration of the funds within the parameters of the legislation, which is quite strict.
So in our budget, we have no, in our bylaw, we have no obligation, and nor do they have any obligation to report to us, because I don't know that I've ever seen an actual budget come to council. So I take it, I'm thinking this doesn't change anything, but I'm just wondering if the way it's been operating is actually how the bylaw was initially set up. That was really my question.
Thank you. So I'll no further questions. I'll call the question on the amended recommendation. All in favor? Opposed? Everybody in favor? Councillor Hooper, I can't, upside down, I can't see your hands. Are you in favor?
Opposed.
Opposed. Councillor Hooper opposed. Thank you. Next order of business, please.
Yes, Your Worship, there's a second part to the recommendation.
And the second part?
Yes, the second part is that staff send a letter to the District of Kent and Fraser Valley Regional District advising that Tourism Harrison will be applying as a designated recipient under the Municipal and Regional District Tax Program.
And this is for the correspondence moved by Councillor Piper, seconded by Councillor Palmer. Any discussion on the correspondence? None being, I call the question. All in favor? Councillor Hooper?
Opposed.
Opposed, Councillor Hooper. Thank you. And next order of business, please.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. The next report is a financial officer, and this is regarding the tax rate multiplier for 2021.
Ms. Jones.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to the rest of Council. At the January 2021 Committee of the Whole, Council directed staff to bring forward scenarios for tax rate multipliers for 2021. As part of setting the tax rate each year, Council may review and amend the class multiplier that is used as part of the tax rate calculation. Tax rate class multipliers are set as a ratio in relation to the residential rate. In 2020, Council set the multiplier for the Class 6 business property at 3:1 and the Class 8 recreational rate at 3.5:1. Included with this report are examples of the impact on the 2021 tax rates for changes to the multiplier. Option 1 shows the impact if the 2020 multiplier continues for 2021. Option 2 shows the impact if Council reverts back to the multiplier set in 2019. And option 3 is an example of changes to the multiplier that fall within the first two options. Staff is looking for direction from Council as to the multipliers to be used for Class 6 business and Class 8 recreational for 2021. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll get some discussion moving on this. We'll start with Councillor Palmer.
Thank you. Certainly, I'd indicated last meeting my preference. We historically had for several years, or for the previous 2 years, 3 years in a row, where the 2019 multipliers were in effect. Last year, of course, I know we varied the multiplier, and I supported the variation of the multiplier, but again, my logic for doing that was that the business properties had a significant increase in assessment value and residential did not. So it was going to create a significant increase in business taxes at a time when COVID was also making business a difficult environment. I understand that COVID still makes business a difficult environment, but this year the assessed values for businesses have not gone up. They've actually gone down a bit, and residential has gone up a bit. So it seems to me very fair to go back to the 2019 multipliers, which when I look at various multipliers in other municipalities, we're being reasonably fair to the businesses. It's by no means is that unfair to the businesses in terms of what other municipalities are doing. So I certainly support going back to the 2019 multiplier, which will increase residential taxes this year. And I understand that would mean that the residential taxes would only be, I take it as I think I'm reading this right, 1.31 increase rather than the 3.9 that would otherwise be the case in option 1.
Thank you. Do you have any comments on that, Ms. Jones?
Yes, just to confirm for Councillor Palmer, with the option 2 of reverting to the 2019 multipliers, the residential rate would see an increase of 1.31%, the business 2.87%, and the recreational properties 20.13%.
Okay, Councillor Palmer.
And then, yes, I understand. Then an option 1 I see would be 3.9. Business would be a drop of 0.46, and recreational with 3.41. That's correct as well. So is that, again, looking back?
Yes. Option 1 is what you said, and option 3, which is something in between, is 2.3% for residential, 3.46% for business, and a 1.82 for recreational.
Right.
Okay, Councillor.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vidal.
Thank you, Your Worship. I echo Councillor Palmer's comments on the 2019 rate that we set. I'm happy and satisfied with what we were able to do for our business community last year. I do think that a 1.31 increase is a reasonable expectation for our residents this year. So I'm going to echo Councillor Palmer's thoughts, and I would like to see us revert to 2019 rates, which would be option number 2. Thank you.
Thank you. No, any questions on that, Ms. Jones?
No, not at this time.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hooper?
Yes, I'm going for option 2 as well. Revert back to 2019. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Piper?
Thank you, Your Worship. I think I've been quite vocal about my worries and sympathies with our local business community. There may have been a lot of surprises this summer with the amount of people that came into town, and that might have been a lifesaver for some of them, but there was a lot of last year that that was up in the air. So I am sympathetic to our business community. I do take pause at seeing the large increase with option 2 to the recreational side of the community, which causes me concern. So I feel option 3, I feel most comfortable with. It's even keel, sorry, pardon me, option 2. It's just I'm taking pause with that large increase for recreational. So I don't mind the reverting back this time. So my vote is for option 2. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And any questions, Ms. Jones, on those? No, you're okay? Yeah, from my perspective, maybe this time last year, we were thinking that things would be maybe far ahead in what they are now, but unfortunately, things haven't moved in that direction, unfortunately. And I wish that everything would fall into place for the coming season for all of us to benefit, and in regards to events and everything else, and to start bringing people back in. But I'm afraid I cannot see that happening till everybody has been vaccinated for the second time. It's unfortunate. So I think it would be another blow to the businesses if we went against the option 2 decision on this. So I appreciate your comments on this. There's no other questions on the financial multiplier. I'll call the question. You need a motion for this, I assume? Yes.
Yes, Your Worship.
Do you need to read? You want to read something out on the motion, or?
Your Worship, through you, somebody could put a motion on the floor being their favored scenario, because there's really just options 1, 2, and 3.
Sorry, I couldn't. Sorry, I couldn't quite hear that.
Oh, pardon me. What we're looking for is a motion putting forward one of the options that the financial officer has presented for you. Option 1 being the status quo, option 2 being a return to 2019 multipliers, and option 3 being sort of a compromise position between the two.
Okay, so you heard that. That's the move by Councillor Palmer. Option 2,
2.
Councillor Palmer.
Yes, option 2.
Option 2. A seconder, Councillor Vidal. Any further discussion? So I'll call the question. All in favour? Everybody in favour? Yes? Thank you. Okay, next order of business.
Yes, Your Worship.
Next order of business, please.
Yes, Your Worship. We'll move on to bylaws, number 13, and that is a report from the financial officer. This is regarding the 2021-2025 financial plan, bylaw number 1161, 2021.
Ms. Jones?
Thank you, Your Worship, through you to the rest of council. At the January 20, 2021 Committee of the Whole, council reviewed the draft 2021-2025 financial plan. The following were amendments made from that meeting. inclusion of a $50,000 in funding from the COVID-19 Safe Restart Grant in the 2021 budget year for a review and update of the Occupational Health and Safety Plan, including applicable COVID-19 protocols. Approval of proposals from the pay parking report, including an increase to projected revenues and expenses increase to upgrade meters to a more user-friendly platform. And the third one, inclusion of an expenditure for a parking management plan estimated at $30,000. In addition, there's one item for clarification. During the presentation, I'd referenced water treatment plant equipment as being replacement of membranes, and the priority is actually for replacement of generators. That doesn't change the budget, it's just for clarification purposes. So pursuant to Section 165 of the Community Charter, Council must adopt annually a 5-year financial plan that sets out the objectives and policies of the municipality. Pursuant to Section 166, we must undertake a process of public consultation regarding the proposed financial plan before its adoption. Following the first reading, the plan will be made available for public consultation at an open house tentatively scheduled for February 16, 2021 at 10 a.m. via Zoom. Staff will provide a summary of the public feedback regarding that meeting at the regular council meeting on February 16, 2021. And financial plan bylaw number 1161 will be on the agenda for further consideration by council at that time. The public will have additional opportunity to provide comment during that meeting. Accordingly, the 2021-25 financial plan bylaw number 1161 2021 is attached for council's consideration. The recommendations are that the 2021 to 2025 financial plan bylaw number 1161 2021 be introduced and given first reading, and that the 2021 to 2025 financial plan be forwarded for public consultation at an open house to be held via Zoom on February 16, 2021. Thank you.
Thank you. Two recommendations, or one? One for two, okay. So it's for both the recommendation. Do we have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Piper, seconded by Councillor Vidal. Discussion. Councillor Vidal.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to our financial officer, I just wanted some clarification on the amendments that Council requested at the Committee of the Whole, specifically the inclusion of an expenditure for parking management plan estimated at $30,000. Is that set to come out of general revenue, or is that going to come from collected parking fees?
Ms. Jones?
Thank you, Your Worship. With the increased revenue projected for 2021 from pay parking, it's anticipated that there'll be additional funds available to pay for the parking master plan. So the additional funds will go into the parking reserve, and the parking master plan will be funded from that reserve.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from council?
Yeah, I've got a couple of.
Councillor Hooper?
Yeah. So we've got a separate reserve fund that the parking money goes into, or does it all go into the general revenue fund?
Ms. Jones?
In the past, the pay parking has gone into general revenues, but there is a parking management reserve that was set up a number of years ago with a small amount of money in it. And for this additional revenues that were identified through the proposal, we were putting those funds into that parking management reserve so that it could fund this parking master plan document.
Yeah.
Yes, councillor?
Yeah, I do see that 30,000 is a little bit high, bearing in mind that our parking system is already set up. Unless we're going to extend paid parking into the residential areas, which I wouldn't want to see at all. So I think 30,000 is extortionate on that. And also we had the 50,000 for the health and safety plan, which has already been said at the previous meetings. You wanted 100,000 for it. So if we do half of it, where are we going to find the other 50,000 from? So no, as it stands at the moment, I can't support the financial plan having its first reading. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, councillor. Ms Jones, you have any comments on that? No, thank you. Thank you very much. Any other comments from council before I call the question?
Yeah, 1 minute.
Yes,
Did you say this was a vote for the two of them, or are they being
this is
done
for both.
for both?
Yes, this is for the financial plan bylaw 1161 to be introduced, to be given first reading, and that the financial plan be forwarded for public consultation at an open house on February the 16th by Zoom.
Most on the table that they're done separately. Because
No,
if I vote,
these are, I've checked with the corporate officer, they're together.
well, if I vote against the financial plan, I'm also voting against the open house.
You would be, councillor, yes.
Well, I don't want to vote against the open house. This is why the two read separately. It doesn't give us a choice.
So is your amendment?
That's fine, your
Wait,
worship.
you want to put an amendment forward, councillor?
Yeah,
Your worship, excuse me.
Hello, just a second, I'm getting some information from the corporate officer here.
Certainly, if council wants to address each part of the motion separately, that's totally fine.
That's what I thought. Okay, we'll address them instead of doing an amendment, we'll address these separately. Okay, councillor?
Yeah.
So on the first recommendation that the 2021-25 financial plan bylaw 1161 2021 be introduced and be given first reading, all in favor? Opposed?
Opposed.
Opposed, councillor Hooper. Motion passes. I'm in favor. And a second, that the 21-25 financial plan be forwarded for public consultation to an open house to be held via Zoom on February the 16th, 2021. Call the question. Moved by, Councillor Palmer.
I just wanted to point out, your worship, you don't have a mover for the second one. There was a mover.
We had a mover for both,
broken.
okay.
But I
You're
think
quite correct.
I think you need a
You're
mover.
quite correct. You're quite correct. We had the mover for both. So you want to move this one, councillor?
Sure.
Moved and seconded by councillor Piper. I'll call the question again. Thank you, sir, for that clarification. Call the question. All in favor? Everybody's in favor of this one, correct,
Yeah.
councillor Hooper?
In favour.
Thank you. Okay, that's done. Next order of business.
Thank you, your worship. Yes, we'll move on to the late items from Councillor Palmer.
My apologies.
Councillor Palmer.
Okay, I have written out a motion, and I can read it slowly, and it's not super long, that in the event that any of the applications of the village for any of the following grants, and then I've listed them: storm sewer infrastructure on Hot Springs Road, budget up to 2 million; Miami River Greenway and McCombs Walking Trail, budget up to 350,000, both approved for grant for application on October 19th, 2020. And thirdly, renovating the fire hall with for up to 750,000, which was approved on January 18th, 2021. So again, in the event that the application of the village for any of the following grants, the ones I just listed, is approved, that the project must be approved by council before being submitted for bids.
And do we have a seconder for that?
Yeah.
Councillor Hooper, second that. A discussion. Councillor Palmer.
If I may, first off, the three projects I find are good projects. And the reason I introduce is simply that when we make the application or approve an application for a grant, we don't really have an opportunity to delve into the issues or the plans that carefully, because basically council's considers the application usually within the week when the grant application is due. So it doesn't give us the opportunity to get into it very deep or even have opinions on what we're doing. And I know at the time there were discussions saying, oh, well, we'll deal with it if we get the grant. But my concern being that I know that it doesn't have to come back other than I know there'd be a motion to approve the tender. But by the time we're approving the tender, all the details have been worked out. There's nothing to be changed at that point in terms of the projects. So I'd like the opportunity, once we know we have a grant, to at least look at it. It may well be that significant changes can't be made, but I at least would have the opportunity to discuss the issues in greater depth and with more time than we're afforded when we simply are agreeing to forward an application for a grant on a somewhat rushed basis. So again, this motion shouldn't be construed as my opposition to any of those grant applications, but more just the opportunity to have a more fulsome discussion before we finalize the specifications and solicit grants or solicit bids from potential tenderers. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Yeah, just one.
Councillor Piper and Councillor Hooper.
Thank you, Your Worship. And with respect, I can't support my colleague's motion. I think, to be blunt, it's micromanaging, and it's not within our responsibilities to be in there counting nuts and bolts and the dealings of each specific project. It comes back, in my opinion, we were asked if staff could apply for the grant. We gave that approval. And at the appropriate time, the information in which we will base our decisions on comes back to the table. So I appreciate the councillor's ask, but I will not be supporting this.
Thank you. Councillor Hooper.
Yeah, I was always under the impression, I might be reading it wrong, that actually we have to get permission before council approval to do the project before we actually do the grant application. Is that right?
Have any comments on that, CEO?
No, Your Worship, I didn't understand the question. I apologize.
Can you repeat the question, Councillor? You're coming through very quietly.
Well, I was always under the impression that before we could apply for a grant, we had to agree the project first of all. Is that correct?
Donald?
Yes, those are the motions that you approve at that stage when staff brings a proposal forward to make application for a particular project that may be sitting on the shelf, or it may be a new one, or it may be something that's fallen out of the master plan and now there's funding available. So you make that motion to approve the project, or the grant application would not be complete.
Right, and the second question is that I support Councillor Palmer in this one, as that should the grant be given to us is less than what we've asked for, they're going to have to come back to the table to ask for where to get the extra money from. So I fully support Councillor Palmer in this one. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Vidal.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, I am tending to agree with Councillor Piper's view of this, mainly because I believe our role as council is to approve a grant application. Once that is approved, I think we need to put some trust in our staff to see the project through. I just have some concerns that I could see the potential for some, extended delays in getting a project off the ground and started and completed. So with that said, I I am not going to support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. From my perspective, I mean, I've dealt with numerous applications for a number of years, and not just on this, in this seat, but also at the regional district level as well. And it's, I say we on the regional district, or we on council, allow our administration and engineers to do the job that they're paid to do, to bring forward to us the best report for that particular project and letting us know what it's going to cost. Nobody can predict unknowns. That's impossible. That happens in every project that you do. You never know when you open up the ground what's below there sometimes. So those things, in most cases with Harrison, we've been pretty fortunate that we haven't run over budget. And in some cases we were under budget. We were allowed to do more drainage work as we did on last year. Yeah, my personal look at this is that I rely on staff and our engineering team and our planning team to come forward with us with the application that this is the sewer plant needs membranes, so many, and the grant we've applied for is $1 million, whatever the case may be, and we move forward with that application. That is the job of council. Yes, I don't disagree that you may want to have a little bit more information at the time, but you can ask. We have our management team here who are able to try and answer some of those questions that they have done in the past, but to get to the point where we're going to, as Councillor Piper put it, micromanage our staff to that point. Well, I don't see that's not the way I've ever worked in 22 years on council. So that's my piece on this. And I say I respect Councillor Palmer's and Hooper's comments. I mean, that's why we have a council to discuss these things and come out with what you think is the right thing to do and what you think that you really don't agree with, but would like more added to it as the specific project moves along. Councillor Palmer.
I just wanted to. I can see how the vote will go, and but I just wanted to respond because it's not an attempt to micromanage, and I'll use Councillor Piper's word. To be blunt, my job is to pay attention to what's going on. And for instance, when we have the Macomb Road, I'm interested that the professionals decided, for instance, how that sidewalk would be. So that was determined in the proposal. We asked questions about it at that time, and at that time, many of the answers were, well, we'll see later, but we won't see later. It's set up. So not everything. I mean, I don't plan on coming up with opinions on what the correct width of some piece of mechanism in the sewer plant is. I do believe in professionals, what with being one. So I do accept that we listen to professional advice, but sometimes it's not professional advice in terms of whether a walkway should be asphalt or gravel or something more environmental. Those are areas that maybe should have some community involvement. But it concerns me that we get a proposal on a Friday and have to vote on it on a Monday. Now, it may well be that has been around in City Hall, in the Village Hall for 2-3 months being worked on, but nobody comes and says, what's your thoughts? We are always in a take it or leave it position. And I respect that. But I do think that on some where it's not just a technical issue, I think there's political decisions being made. And I think that if it's a political decision, I should be involved in it. That's my view of my job, not to micromanage. I'm not out there telling the people how to, manage the village. But I do think that there are some areas where they are political decisions, and I feel I should be responsible for inputting into them. That's why I raise this issue. Not that I want to see those projects blocked, not that I want to see them delayed. And I don't think it has to be for them to come back. But I recognize at present, we may not see them again until we're simply voting on issuing a contract, issuing a tender. which means it's too late for any changes. So I want to, I want to express my vote, and I want to go on the record as saying that I think that they should come back. That's good. If we lose, I mean, if I lose my motion, I can certainly live with that. I've lost several motions here before, but that is.
Thank you, Councillor. But I think, and the administrator can pull me over on this, correct me if I'm wrong, but when we have an application come forward to apply for a grant, this is where there's a bit of confusion that comes forward. We're applying for that grant first for a specific project. After the application has gone through and the grant has been successively awarded, then the administration comes back with information in regards to that, or do we move straight forward with the project? Because I know when we discussed the wide path on McCoons, I can recall Councillor Piper saying we will be having some discussion on the safety issues of that path and the roads. I think those things will be discussed, but the CEO is going to clarify something here.
Thank you, Your Worship, for this opportunity. There's been some very good points brought to the table tonight by Council, and Councillor Hooper is absolutely correct that we require a motion of Council for almost every grant that we do, and certainly every one that we bring to the Council table, approving the project before the funding agencies will consider it. Otherwise, it would be a massive waste of their time. Some projects go out as a request for proposal type of scenario, in which case proposals come back that Council can consider. They can go back and forth on them. They can pick the details that they like, depending on how the scope goes out. We have a number of projects moving forward this year where Council has specifically asked for an assurance that the staff report will come back about a scope, but these aren't the time-sensitive grant application type projects. And it's absolutely true, the system is less than ideal. Money gets announced, deadlines are quick, staff members have to move quite quickly to put the best proposal forward that they can with the limitations of how much we can spend on engineering if it's a new project without it being funded, that sort of thing. But I might speak specifically to the McCombs Miami River Trail active transportation piece. That kind of calls out for a request for proposal type of competition, in which we could put a number of opportunities out there for the construction community to bring back the best case scenario. Some things are more technical in nature, such as the upgrade to the fire hall, which was one of the projects that was mentioned, which includes a substantive seismic upgrade, which has been engineered, and that report was accepted by Council more than a year ago, I think. So that's not a discretionary item that really is appropriate for much more discussion. And also, Councillor Vidal brought up a very good point, is that if we reopen projects for a complete rethink or reconsideration after approval, for one thing, it's probably going to undermine the confidence of higher levels of government in considering our applications, but also we normally have very tight timelines to meet in terms of project start dates and finish dates. And unfortunately, it's just the way these transfer payments come from higher levels of government, which is what I consider grants to be, as transfer payments, but they're discretionary and they come with a lot of requirements that we have to meet. So I do respect and recognize the concerns that have been brought to the table tonight, and as staff, we'll take these into consideration and do our best to provide Council a better comfort level in terms of information about projects that we're bringing forward.
Thank you, CEO. So that's like I said earlier on, that there are times when there will be reports, like Ms. McDonald just said, to Council to discuss on certain issues. So those areas will be discussed, Councillor Palmer. They will come before Council to make some decision whether we we like it or we don't like it, or we don't want to go forward, we don't like the color of the pathway or the color of the stone or whatever the trees, whatever the case may be. But there's instances where those things do come before council for some consideration, and we've done that several times over the past 2 years in regards to that. But yes, unfortunately, the governments do not give you much time when they ask for these grants. When they come forward, everybody jumps onto them. I know this through the regional districts as well. As soon as the grant application is there, the reports are already there for the directors to vote on, to move forward to apply for the grants. And that's absolutely correct. They don't give you a lot of time on this. And you don't want to lose a grant because you don't, and there are some communities who are not as fortunate as us, that we do have good grant people who can make applications with all the necessary information that's there. And I know from past ministers, if anything is not crossed properly when it comes to their table in the spring, then it goes back again and you have to wait another year. So we've been very, as one minister told me several years ago, Harrison is very good at putting in their applications. They're always correct, they're well done, and they don't have to go back for more clarification. So we've been very fortunate that we had the staff to do that, where other communities, small communities, don't have that luxury of, they have to farm it out to get a consultant to do that for them. So again, as Mr. McDonald said, it's been good discussion on this and really appreciate it. But now if there's any further discussion, I'll call the question.
Yes.
Yes,
I've got a few
Councillor
questions.
Hooper first, then Councillor Palmer.
Yeah, with Councillor Palmer's recommendations and that. Yes, I mean, we are asked to approve the going forward with a grant on the barest of informations. I mean, if we take the footpath up McCombs, there was no measurements, no squared area. There was no one even knew what material we're going to use. There was the how much of the overhanging trees were to be cut, how many power poles were in the way. This is all information that you need to go forward on. Changes I mean, it's pointless us saying, yes, we're going to approve a footpath up McCombs, then find out that our 10-foot footpath becomes 5 foot, or it has to split round poles, and or it's not wide enough for buggies, or we're using something else. No, we need more information on these grant applications. Staff need to actually come to us and say, this is going to be the squared area, this is how many trees are involved. The footpath can't be 10 feet in the whole length of McCombs, it can only be 5 in one part. Unless we get this information, we can't make a decision, or we're making a decision on the barest information that's given to us. And the other point I've got is that everyone's saying about micromanaging. No one's micromanaging. It's council's duty to direct staff how we want to proceed. And I think that with this motion that Councillor Palmer's put on the table, it will help us greatly that we're going to understand what we're doing, the actual cost of it. I mean, if you take the Hot Spring Road drainage, when I asked how water was going to get up from the back of the properties to the drainage, we were told sump pumps. Now we're going to put sump pumps in every property. There could be more sump pumps there. It is absolutely, and I've said this time and time again with the planning, we need drawings and we need the actual information on exactly what's involved. Otherwise, we're just sticking a pin in the donkey's tail. Thank you.
I should repeat my thank you, Councillor, for your very good points on that. The Hot Springs Road, of course, is being dealt with by the Ministry of Transportation, and they have engineers as well that will be dealing with that as a joint venture if the grant comes through. Again, I will repeat myself that when we are applying for the grant, we're applying for the grant. The all the specifications and when we're talking about the footpath on McCombs Drive, the manager of community services gave us a colored outlay of what the plan was going to look like, and the width and all that stuff. Yes, maybe there wasn't about the power poles and those sort of things, but it gave an outline of what was proposed to go for the 350,000, I think it was, the application, and that's all you need for the application. Where the confusion comes in is when you're making an application, you're applying for the grant. Let's get that point of view. Let's get that through first. If we don't get the grant, then nothing happens. Let's get the grant, and then we get the specifications and the size and whether the bushes or the trees, well, the power poles wouldn't be moved, I wouldn't think, and will the width work all the way down? It's the application is what council first order of business goes through, and this sometimes becomes confusing to some people, whether it's on council or whether it's on other areas that I deal with. So that's that point of view. I say engineering is done by engineering, planning is done by planning. In the Hot Springs Road case, we're dealing with the Ministry of Transportation. They're a lot bigger than what we are, and it's that will be a major project if it comes through. And that's what I brought up with the minister last Friday in regards to facilitating that dialogue and that conversation with the Ministry of Transportation. Like council was very, very well involved with the planning, with our planner, not our planner, our engineer, and comment, and the Ministry of Transportation when we were discussing Lillooet Avenue. And a lot of good comments came from council and what they would like to have seen on Lillooet Avenue. We had renderings of all the different type of scenarios for Lillooet Avenue as well. So to say that we don't get these things, we do get these things, and that's one perfect example. Councillor Palmer.
Just one last question. I don't want to draw it out any further. The question I had asked earlier that your worship had communicated through the chief administrative officer. I think the question that maybe I'll rephrase it because although I appreciate the answer that was given, it really wasn't the answer to the question. My question really is it, does procedure require, like talking about the trailway along McCombs, does our present procedure require that topic return to council prior to approving a contract? Because it's my understanding that the procedure doesn't require that. I want it to do that. And if it gets brought back, then I'll be happy. But I need to know, does our present procedure, is there a reason why it would be obligated, that the administration would be obligated to bring that back upon approval of the grant for further discussion by council?
Thank you, Councillor. Ms. MacDonald.
Thank you. Yeah, I welcome the opportunity to provide clarification on that question. No, once a project is approved by council for application, we apply for the funding and then the project is a go. And that speaks to Councillor Hooper's earlier question, which was, is council's approval of the project required before we apply for funds? Yes. So the project is approved. It does come back to council for approval once it's tendered, if it's strictly a technical project like a lift station or a road upgrade or drainage, depending on the cost of the particular project. If it's a request for proposals, and I spoke to that earlier, it also comes back to council, but it really is at the decision-making stage. Councillor Vidal made a very good point earlier that after a grant is approved is not the time to open up a project to rescope it, because the funding agency approves or doesn't approve a project based on the scope that is submitted. Rescoping is possible sometimes, particularly if you come in under budget. and you can add additional items to the project that are within the program scope. But this whole conversation is really quite productive because it really underlines the need for the development of good master plans, updates on master plans, so that plans can be adopted at a council level, that staff can have confidence in bringing forward for support for funding applications, rather than trying to sort of look to perceived needs in the community and meet these extremely tight funding timelines, such as we've done with the most recent stream of COVID-19 funding.
Thank you. Does that help, Councillor?
Yeah, thank you. That's helpful.
Yeah,
Thank
just
you.
one more question. So when staff do their assessment of this, as I said before, I'd like to see more detail supplied to the council. I'd like to know exactly how they come to these figures. Because at the end of the day, if we accept the budget, if we accept the grant and it goes over budget, it is the residents that pay it. If we only get part of the grant, if they only give us 1.5 million for the Hot Springs Road, do we say we're not doing it, or do we raid our reserves again to fund it? So I'd like to see a lot more information when staff produce these applications for grant. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Before I give it to Ms. McDonald, she has an answer on that. I just want to, I don't know if council in the past 2 years has sat down and written down the amount of projects that this council has gone through for the betterment of the village and for our tourists through either the RMI or grant money or DCCs, where not one penny has been asked of the taxpayers to do all these projects. There's numerous ones that we've gone through, and that's a good thing. And I'm glad that we've been able to do that. Ms. McDonald.
Yes, I would like to echo Councillor Hooper's comment that we would all like to see a lot more time, a lot more lead time on these projects. But to answer the question specifically, the budgets are prepared by our professional engineers.
Thank you. Councillor Vital.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think in a perfect world, we would all like to have the opportunity to have more input, especially into our larger projects. But I certainly appreciate our CIO's comment on it's the provincial government or federal government that sets the parameters and the deadlines for grant applications. So I'm sure they're kind of walking a tightrope at some times and trying to get those grant applications in within the deadline. I do want to also get some clarification from our CEO. Once the grant application is approved and the project is scheduled to go ahead, there would be certain times during the project and certain instances where I do believe that it would have to come back to council for, lack of a better word, a political decision. And the one that comes to mind is if the project is going over budget, to request additional funding, or if it is under budget, how to spend and enhance that project in relation to the total grant funding. Is that correct?
Ms. McDonald.
Yes, Your Worship, through you. It would depend on the level of the change, the level of the change order, whether it fell within the spending authority and the approved budget, which is also a bylaw. If it's just a small thing, we don't go back to council with every change order on a big infrastructure project because it would just be completely unwieldy. But as you say, for a political decision, like a change in scope, whether that be budgetary or geographic, or something comes up and there's an opportunity or a challenge that requires a change in scope, yes, that comes back to council.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. So if
Yeah,
no
one more-
further questions, I'll
Yeah, one
call
more
the,
last question.
yes, councillor Hooper.
Because you were saying about, we've never gone over budget and that. And I respect your comments on that, but council never gets to see the final cost of any of these works, do we? We don't know what the final cost is, whether it's, whether they, we need to know the final cost. But
Thank
we
you, councillor.
Are we?
Okay. Note, that's been noted. Any further discussion? So I'll call the question on the recommendation from councillor Palmer. All in favour?
In favour?
Favour, opposed? Opposed, motion fails. Thank you. Next order of business, please.
Yes, Your Worship, the next item is number 14, questions from the public pertaining to agenda items only.
Any questions from the public this evening pertaining to the agenda only? Thank you.
Any member of the public who wishes to ask a question should now use the raised hand feature. Participants will be called on one at a time, and you will have the option to unmute yourself when called on. There are no questions from the public.
Thank you. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Palmer and seconded by Councillor Vidal. All in favour? Thank you, everybody. Thanks for attending. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Stay safe. Thank
Thank you.
you.
Night.
Night.